Speaker, I want to start with Clause 4 by the Senate to delete of the bill, because I believe this was the crust of what was proviso that provided that a national public was in contention between ourselves and the team from the National Assembly, and I'm very happy that we were able to agree on a mediated version. Honorable Speaker, the committee considered Clause 4 and concurred with the proposal by the Senate to delete the proviso that provided that a national public water works shall not be transferable to a county government, be dropped to allow for the non-transferability of national public water works. Section 8 of the Water Act, Cap 372, sets out national public water works that are intended to serve a national government function and are financed by the national government share of the national revenue pursuant to the Public Finance Management Act, and hence the same way not transferable to counties. Further, some of these national public water works cut across counties, and therefore it will pose an administrative challenge to determine which county to transfer such public works. Honorable Speaker, just to make it very easy, especially for my colleagues, on this particular clause, it was the proposal of the Senate that we should delete a proviso that national public water works shall not be transferable to the county, but after what we discussed at the mediation committee, after a national public work is complete, the Water Work Development Authority may not or shall not be required to transfer it to the counties, because, Honorable Speaker, it shall remain as the body that will be dealing with the bulk water. Then it shall transfer it to the water service provider. The reason why we in the Committee of Water had initially thought that it is important that we transfer this to the county government was so that we try and be compliant with the Constitution, because, Honorable Speaker, you know, according to Schedule 4 of the Constitution of Kenya, water and sanitation are preserved of the county government. So we were wondering how, if projects that are completed by the national government are not handed over to the county governments, how then will we be compliant such that the national government shall not be dealing with waters to do with water and sanitation, but the cure and to arrange the fears of the Senate and to arrange the fears of the senators when we first passed this bill, Honorable Speaker. Waterworks development authorities, their scope will only be limited to the bulk water. It will not be in terms of last mile. Once they are done with the water with the project, they will hand it over to water service providers. In this case, it will be counties. Honorable Speaker, it would have been very difficult to transfer a national water work project if it is it cuts between 2-3 counties. Honorable Speaker, case on point is that the Karimenu water project is a project that runs to 3 counties: Kiambu, Nairobi, and Machakos. So it would have been very difficult to transfer it. I mean, it would be even difficult to determine which county it will go to. Whereas the bill provides that water work bulk purchase agreements will be subject to Public-Private Partnerships Act, which provides for a general framework for the feasibility and approval of PPP projects across the various sectors under Section 32. This does not preclude adding more specific requirements for the water sector given the unique nature of the water services. The role of the Water Services Regulatory Board as a regulator is crucial in ensuring these projects meet high standards. Honorable Speaker, I want to quickly then run to Clause 2. That the committee considered Clause 2 and noted that the National Assembly had rejected the Senate's amendment to include the definition of a joint committee. And to make it then very quick, again, Honorable Speaker, once that the project is now not being transferred to the counties, it will not be necessary then to have joint committees. So the Senate's proposal to have defined joint committees was linked to the transferability of national water works And as the mediation committee had agreed to drop the proposal for transferability in clause 4, the committee observed that the definition of joint committees was no longer necessary. So it was easy to agree on this one, Honorable Speaker. Allow me then to also quickly run to clause 3, an amendment to section 32 on the powers and functions of the Water Storage Authority. Honorable Speaker, the committee considered clause 3 and agreed that the proposal by the Senate on the requirement to subject bulk water purchase agreements to an economic efficiency criteria set by the regulatory board be dropped and instead include the Water Services Regulatory Board, WASREB, to be among the bodies to be consulted whenever water storage authorities enter into a bulk water purchase agreement. I think this one, Honorable Speaker, is a bit straightforward. Whereas the bill provides that the bulk water purchase agreements will be subject to the Public-Private Partnership Act, which provides a general framework for the feasibility and approval of the PPP projects across the sectors under Section 32. This does not preclude adding more specific requirements for the water sector, given the unique nature of the water services. The role of the Water Services Regulatory Board, WASREB, as the regulator is crucial. And in a subsequent clause, Honorable Speaker, you see that we have reinforced this particular clause, Honorable Speaker. And allow me, I'll keep jumping so that we are able to flow with how we amended or we agreed on this mediated version. I want to then go to clause 7, Honorable Speaker, an amendment to section 72 on the powers and functions of the regulatory board. Honorable Speaker, the committee considered clause 7, which outlines the powers and functions of the regulatory board to evaluate and recommend water tariffs. The committee concurred with the Senate proposal to separate WASREB's authority to evaluate and recommend water and sewerage tariffs for water service providers from its authority and evaluate and recommend bulk water tariffs for Water Works Development Authority. Honorable Speaker, you recall that bulk water would then be a preserve of Water Works Development agencies, and it is fair that we allow and we do not put them together, such that the tariff for bulk water is the same as the tariff for the water that is being provided by water service providers, Honorable Speaker. Because, Honorable Speaker, most of this water is actually the water that now goes to the consumer. So if we allow the water that is going to the consumer to have the same tariffs as the water that is being provided for at the bulk level by the Water Works Development Authority agencies, Honorable Speaker, we shall make water a very expensive commodity, and we have to protect the people of Kenya, and that is why we had to set in this particular clause. That is clause or section 72(1)(c), which already provides that WASREB's role in evaluating and recommending water and sewerage tariffs for water service providers, and the bill needed to distinctly address the evaluation, recommendation, and approval for processes for bulk water tariffs. We had to have them separate, Honorable Speaker. I then go to clause 6, handover of completed works. Honorable Speaker, the committee considered clause 6 of the bill, which outlines the handover of completed works, and rejects the Senate's proposal to hand over National Public Water Works Authority, Water Works to county governments. It is the same explanation that I had given earlier, Honorable Speaker, that number one, some of these counties, some of these projects are trans-counties. They transfer in different counties. So it will be difficult to even administer such a project that runs in 3 counties, even agreeing upon which this county, which county this project will be handed over to. It would be administratively a challenge. So we ceded to this proposal by the National Assembly, just as as we had agreed. And Honorable Speaker, it's also important to note that the mother intention of this bill is that we can create a framework for making water a tradable commodity so that private people can be able to engage in water projects, and the easiest people to engage with are the waterworks development authorities. So it will be difficult then, if a private person is the one that developed this project, then it has been handed over to a county, and the agreement had been entered with the Waterworks Development Authority, it would be a very unneat situation. Please, Honorable Speaker, allow me to then go to Clause 5. Section 72 of the Water Act, Cap 372, empowers the regulatory board to publish the regulatory standards without the approval of the Cabinet Secretary. For consistency with the provisions of the law and in order for WASDEP to maintain the independence and autonomy in its operation, WASDEP, the regulatory board, should be empowered to set national standards for the water, for the provision of water services and asset development for water services providers without approval of the Cabinet Secretary. Honorable Speaker, I'm sure from what I have read, you know what we are protecting, what we are trying to protect, Honorable Speaker. It is now an overreach by especially the executive through the Cabinet Secretaries, Honorable Speaker, in a body that is independent, that has been tasked with the responsibility of ensuring that they are the ones that are setting tariffs and they are the ones that are publishing regulatory standards. So for it to require another approval by a Cabinet Secretary, we feel that this would be an overreach of the executive, Honorable Speaker. We need to protect the water, the WASDEP from this overreach by the executive, and that is why we in the mediation committee actually agreed on this particular mediated version of this particular section of the law. However, pursuant to Section 2 and 22 of the Statutory Instruments Act guidelines, the statutory instruments, and consequently there is a requirement for the publication in the Gazette. Section 2 of the Statutory Instruments Act includes guidelines in the definition of the statutory instruments as follows. Statutory instruments mean any rule, order, regulation, direction, form, tariff of, cost of fees, letters, patent, commissions, warrant, proclamation by law, resolution, guideline, or any other statutory instrument issued, made, or established in the execution of a power conferred by or under an act of Parliament under which the statutory instrument or subsidiary legislation is expressly authorized to be issued. So whereas Section 22 provides for the publication of the statutory instruments, subject to Section 2, every statutory instrument shall be published in the Kenya Gazette and shall be assigned a serial number as of the year and that kind of a thing, Honorable Speaker. But what was agreed upon in this particular section of this particular law is that the Cabinet Secretary shall not have to approve or superintend over work that has already been delegated to the water, to WASDEP, the regulatory body. Honorable Speaker, allow me then to go to clause 11. There are not very many clauses that we were dealing with at the mediation level, Honorable Speaker. So I'm not very far from through. I'm actually just 2 sections away from through. Honorable Speaker, clause 11 is an amendment to section 14 of the objects of the Water Trust, Sector Trust Fund. And Honorable Speaker, before I read what is in this mediated version, allow me to express my great displeasure because we invited the Water Trust Fund, the leadership of the Water Trust Fund, to appear before the Committee of the Senate, before it appeared before the before the mediation committee. And what we have been trying to protect, Honorable Speaker, is a proposal to allow Waterworks Development Authority to partake upon the budget of the Water Sector Trust Fund. Honorable Speaker, and I would have wished to refer to the Constitution, and I know those who comment after me will tell you that the reason why the Water Sector Trust Fund was mooted, and the reason why it is part of the government agencies that we have, is so that they can be able to reach where waterworks development authorities cannot get to go, Honorable Speaker. In fact, specifically it is there in law that for them their appraisal or their budgets are supposed to go to the most rural parts of this republic, Honorable Speaker, where it would be economically not viable for any either county government or the national government. They will find it not economically viable to provide water to the people who live in such areas, Honorable Speaker. It is this inequality that necessitated the formation of the Water Sector Trust Fund. So we felt bad that they didn't support the position that had been taken by the Senate, that we should not allow WWDs, that is the Water Works Development Agencies, from partaking from their budget. Because, Honorable Speaker, this was our argument. Where does the funding of the Water Sector Trust Fund come from? They get their funding from Exchequer, they get their funding from partners, they get their funding from donors. Where does the budget of the Water Works Development Authority come from? They get their budget from the Exchequer, they get their budget from the partners, they get their budget from the donors. Why is it that you are getting your budgets from the same source, but you want to partake from a budget of the other agency? Why did they want to open up that budget to the Water Works Development Authority? And more importantly, again, Honorable Speaker, because it is important that I canvass on this particular proposal in law, the budget of the Water Sector Trust Fund for the year 2024-2025 was about 4.7 billion, just 4.7 billion. If you are to divide 4.7 billion, it was actually 4.3 billion, not 4.7. If you are to divide 4.7 billion, Honorable Speaker, with the number of counties that we have, that would be about 90 million. If they were just to share that money equally, it would just be 90 million. 90 million, Honorable Speaker, for every county, including the county that you come from, Nairobi, or the county that you come from, Muranga, or the county that the senators who are here. I would want the senator from Busia to tell us, or the senator from Tana River to tell us, or the senator from West Pokot to tell us, how much would 90 million? What project, what major or big project can be undertaken by any serious government agency with 90 million for a whole county like Tana River, that we now have so much that we can share with the Waterworks Development Authorities, Honorable Speaker, whose budget runs in tens of billions? Why would they want to partake these small budgets that are meant for a small dam in Tana River, a small dam in Busia, a borehole in some place in Busia that is so remote that the Waterworks Development Authorities cannot get, that the county government of Busia cannot get to such a place, Honorable Speaker? So we felt very disappointed that the Water Sector Trust Fund and their leadership did not want to support this, but we are happy that we are able to convince our colleagues from the National Assembly that they support this particular proposal by the Senate. So the committee agreed with the Senate's proposal to delete clause 11 of the bill that proposed to amend section 114 of the Water Act to expand the mandate of the Water Sector Trust Fund by broadening the scope of its entities to which the fund caters. And by the way, the reason that was given by the Water Sector Trust Fund is that most of the donors who want to give money, they don't have a lot of trust with the waterworks development agencies. So, Honorable Speaker, I don't want to say that they wanted to cure diarrhea by sewing the exit, but it looked more like it. There is need to protect the integrity and the purpose of the Water Trust Fund. It is what I've been explaining on this particular clause. Finally, allow me then to go to clause 12, an amendment to section 119 of the Water Tribunal. It was a proposal of the Senate, Honorable Speaker, that since water is a devolved function, it is fair that we allow the Council of Governors to nominate members who shall be sitting in the Water Tribunal. But it also came to our notice, especially from our legal people, that we have to reject that particular proposal. Because if a tribunal is supposed to be an umpire, why then do you need to bring players? Or why would you allow players to nominate people to sit in this particular tribunal? Article 169 of the Constitution of Kenya establishes subordinate courts, including local tribunals established by an Act of Parliament. So in exercising judicial authority under Articles 159 and 160 of the Constitution, tribunals ought to be independent. It is this that informed our decision, Honorable Speaker, of agreeing to reject our own proposal, that we have the Council of Governors nominate 2 people to sit in this tribunal. Because if this tribunal is to be independent, then we must ensure that we remove all the players, either nomination by the Cabinet Secretary, either nomination by the Council of Governors, or any player, so that the tribunal can be independent. I think it is the same case for the House Business Tribunal. It is the same case for the Rent Business Tribunal and all the other tribunals that have been formed in law. It is a preserve of the judiciary to nominate the people who should sit there. It is like, to make it easier, Honorable Speaker, it is like parties being allowed to nominate judges who shall be hearing their matters. It will be very difficult. In the very matter that is before court this afternoon, if I was allowed to nominate a judge, you know, the judge would be very biased because I'm a party to whatever is the proceedings. So the water tribunal, as proposed in the bill, is being under the Water Act. He has dispute related to the implementation of the Water Act. This tribunal itself, Honorable Speaker, is meant to address all the disputes that would come. If there's a dispute on tariffs that has been set by WASREP, they are supposed to be heard by this tribunal. Before if the parties agree, they can go to the superior courts. But if then they are meant to hear these disputes emanating from the Water Act, Honorable Speaker, all the players that have been mentioned in this Water Act then should be kept away from the tribunal so that the tribunal can be independent. So as an arbiter, it is prudent that the tribunal's membership remains as neutral as possible. So as I move on, Honorable Speaker, because that shall be my last clause, I would also want to thank the members of the committee because, Honorable Speaker, it is important to note that the committee that I chair has been dealing with 3 mediations at a go on a week that was very difficult, you know, Honorable Speaker, a week before the 2 impeachments that we had, and the week that we had the impeachments, Honorable Speaker, and we had a mediation on this Water Act. We had another mediation that is coming up, Honorable Speaker, on the National Rating Bill, and we had the final one on the Senator Mungatana Bill on the benefit sharing that is still something that the committee is dealing with. So I thank the members of the committee that they were able to commit a lot of their time so that we can be able to deal with these pieces of legislation. With those very many remarks, Honorable Speaker, I wish to invite the Senator for Nandi to second this motion. I thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Senator. Senator Chiradike Samson.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Sir, I want to take this opportunity.
Please take
Madam
note
Speaker, sorry. Madam Speaker, thank you. Thank you, Madam Speaker, for allowing me to second this motion of the mediated version of water bill. I want to thank the chairperson, who coincidentally is our chair of lands, environment. For I don't know how long he will be, but we want to wish him well, Mr. Speaker. So, Madam Speaker,
Senator Chiradike, what are you insinuating by saying you do not know how long he will be chair of the Standing Committee on Lands and Natural Resources? Are you insinuating at removal of the chairperson or resigning or otherwise exiting from his duties as the chair of this committee?
Madam Speaker, you know, after 5 years, we'll go and seek for mandate unless we add more. But the point I try to make that it will reach a time he will be reassigned maybe to another committee as a chair or lighter duties.
Are you privy to such information
Yeah,
which you
I'm
need
privy.
to disclose to the House?
No, I'm privy, but I've told him in confidence. So, but he's doing a good job. That one does not mean that he's not doing a good job.
Proceed.
And Madam Speaker, you need to protect Metu from the majority leader, because you can see the excitement of majority leader on the matter. I want to congratulate Senator John Metu, one of our youngest senators in the House, for proving time and again that he is equal to the task. And we are very proud that as a young senator, one of the youngest senator, Madam Speaker, he continues to demonstrate good leadership skills both in the committee and in the mediation. And it shows the confidence of the House leadership led by the majority leader to assign him to such very serious tasks. I want to, secondly, to mention of water is life, Madam Speaker. We normally say that. Water is critical, water is important. But the sad story is that accessibility of water here in Nairobi or any other parts is still a challenge, especially in eastern, northeastern, and Nairobi, Madam Speaker. And I said last time that there is no difference, Madam Speaker, between access to water of people in northern Kenya and eastern and Nairobi. Because Nairobi, it comes like a doctor's appointment. You are never sure when water will be available in our taps. And I think this is a big challenge. And when we get legislative interventions led by the Senator Medu's committee to try and come up with such, we don't take it for granted. Madam Speaker, let me begin with a clause number 11, where the National Assembly wanted Water Sector Trust Fund to include, yet it is counties, Senator has explained very well, that fund this Water Sector Trust Fund. It is critical because these Water Sector Trust Funds, Madam Speaker, are used for water and sanitation. Madam Speaker, the projection, for example, in Kapsabet town, we have over 87,000 population. Yet we depend water supply that is being pumped through electricity and generator, Madam Speaker. Because we are still waiting to have establishment of Keben Dam, Madam Speaker, that will ensure there is access to water to Kapsabet town. Madam Speaker, the reason I'm making this point is under United Nations Population Fund, in 2020, there is an massive movement of rural urban, Madam Speaker. And therefore, it is very critical in access of water. There are many upcoming towns, especially in our counties. Wherever you come, for example, in Nandi, we have almost 10 upcoming trading centers, all the way in 6 sub-counties in Nandi. For example, and this growth,
what's your point of
continues
order, Senator Hamida?
Madam Speaker, under Standing Order 41, I think this is an important matter in terms of water, Madam Speaker, and I can see we don't have quorum. Important.
Clerk, can you confirm quorum? Let's have the quorum bell ring for 10 minutes.
Enda waite basi. Sababu wewe ndio umeleta hii shida yote. Lakini surely guys, stop misusing this standing order.
We need to remove.
Well, we now have the quorum bell at the Senate on ring mode after Senator Hamida Kiboana stood on Standing Orders number 41 to notify the Speaker that the House did not have the requisite quorum to continue with the debate on the report of the Mediation Committee on the Water Amendment Bill National Assembly Bills number 33 of the year 2023, according to the Senator. The issue of water is a crucial aspect in the country and ought to be debated when the House has quorum. And guided by the standing orders of the Senate, the Speaker at the moment, Senator Veronica Maina, has directed that the quorum bell be rung for 10 minutes so that senators within the presence of Parliament can make their way back to the chamber to the necessitation of the quoration of the House to continue with the debate. The debate on the floor is a report of the Mediation Committee on Water Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 33 of the year 2023. And why is it a report of the Mediation Committee? Is by the mere fact that the House selected some of its members to sit with their counterparts at the National Assembly to come up with a mediated version of the report on matters Water Amendment Bill. Let's now have a look at the Water Amendment Bill number 23. It is an act of Parliament seeking to amend the Water Act of 2016 to provide for the public-private partnership arrangements for the connected purposes. So in case you're wondering what the Water Amendment Bill number 33 of the year 2023 seeks to achieve, this bill seeks to, among others, provide for powers and functions of waterworks development agencies, which shall be to undertake the development, maintenance, and management of the national public waterworks within the areas of their jurisdictions. The water development agencies are also set to operate the waterworks and provide water services as water service providers until such a time as the responsibility for the operation and management of waterworks are handed over to the county governments, joint committees, authority of the county government, or water service providers within the area of their jurisdiction or supply of the waterworks are located. The Waterworks Development Agency is equally required to provide a reserve capacity for the purposes of providing water services, where pursuant to sections 103, the regulatory board orders that there is transfer of water services functions from the defaulting water service providers to other licensees. Well, the Senate this afternoon, the members of the Senate have been making their ways back into the chamber this afternoon to allow the House raise quorum to continue with the debate on the report of the Mediation Committee on the Water Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 33 of the year 2023. Allow me to hand you over back to the chamber.
It's right away. So Senator Chiradige, take the floor. Please give him the mic.
Madam Speaker, I just want to make 4 points on this mediated version of the water bill. I was on clause number 11, where we were saying that this water trust sector trust fund should remain with counties. Madam Speaker, because most of the funding comes from the counties. And I was just informing the House that, Madam Speaker, with the affordable housing program of the government, now we need water and sanitation, Madam Speaker. I can give you statistics in the benefit of the House that according to the Population Kenya Bureau of Statistics, in 2023, we had more than 16,265,693 Kenyans in urban areas, Madam Speaker. And this was an increase of 3.81%, because in 2022, we have close to 15.6 million Kenyans that were in urban areas. So it means access to water and sanitation will become very critical. And therefore, the intention of National Assembly to thin the Water Trust Fund was very unfortunate, but I'm happy that they agreed with our proposal that since most of the funding that goes to water sector trust funds should remain with counties, and therefore it is very critical. Even, for example, even in my own Kapsabet town, has only a population of 87,000, but access to water is very challenging. The last time water project was launched was during Charity Ngilu when she was the minister, and we are using water. We are using electricity and generator, Madam Speaker. We are depending on Keben Water Project, which the government should start, and also what we call, Madam Speaker, Kipkaren Dam, that is almost to completion, that will feed water to Mosoria Town and Kabie Town, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, and therefore this is very important. Clause number 12, on the Water Tribunal, it is not gainsaid. I want to agree, Madam Speaker, that it is very critical that you cannot choose your judge. I agree with the decision of both the National Assembly and the Senate that you cannot choose members who will sit in water tribunal because they will become biased. The aspect of neutrality should be very critical in water tribunal, Madam Speaker. Madam Speaker, on clause number 6, I agree in the issue of waterworks. Both clause 6 and 7, as I conclude, Madam Speaker, is we should have a handing over. I said yesterday, Waterworks Development Authority, WDDS, Madam Speaker. Like, for example, Nandi, we are under Lake Victoria North Waterworks, Madam Speaker. But when you see most projects go to Kakamega and Viga, yet Nandi, we don't benefit. Even on the issue of, Madam Speaker, of even drilling boreholes in schools and urban centers, these waterworks, Madam Speaker, should be regulated properly. And in fact, when we say WASREP, even in water tariffs, I have seen there is a proposal to have what we call private-public partnership, Madam Speaker, in terms of water. And therefore, even on the issue of water bulk sale agreements, we must give the regulator WASREP, Madam Speaker, so that water tariffs. And I said yesterday, I want to repeat, when you go to a place called Japas in Mexico, Madam Speaker, it is where the most of the Coca-Cola is consumed. Because there, Coca-Cola is more cheaper than water. If our country, we will have more expensive, Madam Speaker, where we have water more expensive than other beverages, that what Majority Leader referred to, some of the favorite drinks of some of the individuals in the House, then that society collapses, Madam Speaker, because clean access water. And when you go to Chiapas in Mexico, and it is on record...
Senator Charadigi, are you aware that the Honorable Majority Leader was asked to withdraw the reference to those drinks?
Madam Speaker, but only on the word changa, but replaced with a favorite drink. I thought that was and the Speaker allowed it. I have said, Madam Speaker, favorite drink. Everybody has a favorite drink, including Senator Eddy and even Senator Chute. Madam Speaker, Madam Speaker, and therefore, even in the water tariffs, in conclusion, is we must have WASREP as a regulator. So that, Madam Speaker, you can see there are so many water tankers in the city. It is very expensive for families. And you remember, Madam Speaker, 60% of households spend on food. Food being part of domestic water that's used for drink. Madam Speaker, are you aware, or the House should be aware, that the moment you have people accessing not very clean water, Madam, there will be many diseases. What that one translates, Madam Speaker, there will be use of treatment. What does it mean, drugs? What does it mean? It means that there will be use of a lot of resources to treat treatable diseases by consuming clean water, Madam Speaker. On waterworks, Madam Speaker, I want to say it is very important, especially on waterworks, that waterworks must, I agree they can run Carmenu, they can run Tuaga Dam, they can run what do we call Itare, Posta, Keben, Sondu, Two Rivers, wherever the dams are, Madam Speaker. But the issue of last mile, and I want to thank the committee, Madam Speaker, members should listen to this. The issue of last mile should be left to the counties. The county should be the ones that should do the last mile distribution of water at that point in time, Madam Speaker. So this mediated version, Madam Speaker, and in line with that, Madam Speaker, is very critical, the issue of water. I request that we agree on this mediated on the Water Bill 2023, Madam Speaker, by agreeing that all of us, we must have a discussion on the basis, Madam Speaker, going into the future. And Madam Speaker, just in conclusion, to call upon members, Madam Speaker, that I'm happy in conclusion that Senator Amida is back because we really supported a statement on the issue of health. You know, when you consume water that is not safe, you become sick. When you become sick, you go to the hospital. When you go to the hospital, you become, the budget running hospital is expensive, Madam Speaker. Therefore, even as we continue in the spirit of access to medical care and access to clean water, Madam Speaker, we also continue to condemn, Madam Speaker, the issue of femicide that looks to be coming back. You have seen there are many deaths, Madam Speaker, that is happening that is unexplained across the country. I saw in Isili, Madam Speaker, even as they struggle to look for the MCA of Shell Award in Wajir County, who unfortunately the DNA gave negative that it was not him, there is unexplained deaths that is happening. And I want to call upon DCI and the police to fast track and investigate so that Kenyans can know what is really happening, Madam Speaker. More so when it happens to women, we don't take it for granted because we know women are very critical and important, and no one should lose their life, Madam Speaker. I hope the Inspector General of Police is listening, the DCI, the DIGNIS, and all other. And I want to ask Kenyans wherever they are, Madam Speaker, especially our young ladies, never go with somebody you are not sure of. As I condole with the MCA who lost the daughter here in Tika, the MCA from Kirinyaga, Madam Speaker, we want to ask our girls, be careful. Don't just be excited what you see in TikTok. Don't just date somebody you are not sure of. Can you do background check? I'm not saying the girls and women should be DCI, Madam Speaker, but at least they should do what we call due diligence before being taken out, Madam Speaker. They need to take care of themselves. The police cannot police everybody. Madam Speaker, and we are tired of losing young. I'm happy there is a breakthrough. Another girl who was found here in Mwigi. Suspects have been arrested, Madam Speaker. But we want to ask our girls and ladies, just be careful, be sure the person you are dating, Madam Speaker. Especially you should date more of Christian men or Muslim men. But those who go Kupati, Madam Speaker, you should be careful with them. And I know Senator Karen Nyamo, Madam Speaker, is happy because there is a new song called Liani, and she should tell us what it means. Anyway, I want to support, Madam Speaker, the mediated version.
Thank you, Senator Cherargei. Honorable Senators, I now propose the question that the Senate adopts the report of the Mediation Committee on the Water Amendment Bill, National Assembly Bills number 33 of 2023, laid on the table of the Senate on Tuesday, 22nd October 2024, and further pursuant to Article 113(2) of the Constitution and Standing Order 167(3) of the Senate, approves the mediated version of the bill. Now the motion is free for debate, and I'll call upon senators who will contribute to this motion. Senator Wamatinga Wahome, Nyeri County.
Thank you very much, Madam Speaker. I did sit in the Mediation Committee, and I'm a member of the committee, standing committee. Indeed, Madam Speaker, the issue of water and scarcity and the reticulation has remained quite a major challenge in this country. That being the case, Madam Speaker, the committee from the Senate and the National Assembly sat together, and in the spirit of one nation and one approach, we did thrash out the issues that we had, and fully aware that matters of water affect county governments. We realize that it is imperative that we agree on a way to move it forward. It is not lost to us, Madam Speaker, that there are counties that are nationally disadvantaged because they are in a geographical location that puts them at disadvantage. We are also fully aware, Madam Speaker, that there are counties that draw water from other counties, and therefore the existence of Waterworks Development Agency provides an infrastructure within which you can be able to aggregate multiple counties so that economies of scale in the implementation of water solutions can be achieved. Madam Speaker, the mediated version of the water bill allows the government, both at the national and the county level, to put the effort together, to pull resources together, and ensure that most of the counties that do not have water, or those do not have enough potable water, do have access. Madam Speaker, it is known to everybody that we did promise in the manifesto of the Kenya Kwanza government to ensure that people get access to water. And the only way, Madam Speaker, because of the limited balance sheet of the country and a lot of money that have been borrowed by the previous regimes, our balance sheet would not be able to support infrastructure development in the water sector. And it is in this spirit, Madam Speaker, that none other than the President himself came up with the idea of getting a kind of a paradigm shift in the way we do implementation of the project, and therefore came up with the idea of making water a tradable commodity that can be handled within public-private partnership. To ensure that that's doable, Madam Speaker, it is imperative that we have laws in place that ensures that the water harvested in reservoirs and reticulated to households can be accounted for. Madam Speaker, it worries me that some counties have as high as 70% non-revenue water. That is water that has been collected, water that has been dispatched through the master meter, but it cannot be accounted for because of the old infrastructure that we have. We know some of the counties, Madam Speaker, will not be on their own be able to put the reticulation systems together. And therefore, it is important that the national government, in collaboration with the county government, come up with a systematic approach that will ensure that the infrastructure is renewed, and most importantly, moving forward and moving with the technology, we come up with a smart meters, smart and intelligent water reticulation system, water leakage systems, as is with gas and oil pipeline. Madam Speaker, if we achieve this, it would mean that in some counties we would save up to 70% of the water that they harvest. We know that in the wake of the climate change, Madam Speaker, our rivers and our groundwater is reducing day by day. This, Madam Speaker, calls us to ensure that we have a new approach, to ensure that we have a more pragmatic approach that will ensure that the water that we harvest is not only used prudently, but also account for each and every drop. Madam Speaker, it is also not lost to us that most households still use untreated water, water that is not fit for human consumption. That being the case, Madam Speaker, the bill seeks to highlight how we can approach this, and most importantly, this enhanced and kind of a renegotiated and mediated bill ensures that the issues that were raising challenges have been addressed. But Madam Speaker, as a country, the biggest challenge that we must face in water reticulation, especially in counties like those lies in the northern part of Kenya and the coastal region of Kenya, Madam Speaker, it's because they do not have the advantage that the counties that are in central region and in the mountain areas and other water catchment areas like the Rift Valley have. And that being the case, Madam Speaker, it is the responsibility of every county, it is the responsibility of every citizen of this country to ensure that every drop of water that we can put our hand on is used properly. Madam Speaker, how can that be achieved? We know counties like Nairobi, Thika, and other counties surrounding the big rivers that flows into the ocean, they have been heavily contaminated by affluent discharge into the rivers. And that is why, Madam Speaker, as the Kenya Kwanza regime assumed power, we formed the Nairobi River Commission that was supposed to handle the issue of water pollution, to handle the issue of river contamination, and most importantly, to ensure that the riparian area is protected so that we can not only protect life, but also ensure that most of the diseases that are caused by the pathogens that are transported by water are addressed. Madam Speaker, it is also not lost to us. Most of the counties that lie in the lower part of the country do have a lot of disadvantage. As much as all the rivers flows into the ocean, by the time the water gets into those counties, it is heavily contaminated. And therefore, Madam Speaker, coming up with a way of changing that approach requires laws that are not only dynamic, but laws that also address issues of how we use our water, how we discharge the affluent, and most importantly, Madam Speaker, how we treat that water before it is put for consumption. Therefore, Madam Speaker, promoting bulky water supply in multiple counties must be looked into. And I'm happy, Madam Speaker, to note that there is an intention by the current government to construct the High Grand Falls Dam that will have multipurpose function. One, it will address the perennial floods that affect the lower counties, like the Tana River. I can see Senator from there here is sitting here. Those counties that are on the lower side of the country, we know that every couple of years we lose lives, we lose property, because once the rivers burst their banks, then we have no control. By construction of the High Grand Falls Dam, which will also produce 1,000 megawatts of electricity, we will have solved that problem, one, by having the floods controlled, and two, by having additional supply of 1,000 megawatts of reliable electricity. On top of that, we'll have multiple counties enjoying the water for irrigation. Madam Speaker, embracing modern technology and also promoting the issue of governance, that has been one of the biggest challenges. Why is that so, Madam Speaker? Most of these waterworks development agencies, including the water service providers, they have been run by kind of a family kind of approach where the governors in most counties, they do not even know what happens, and therefore, we must also put into place structures and systems to ensure that we do not only account for the water that have been harvested and deteriorated, but also to ensure that transparency and governance is written in capital letter. The spirit of the bill, Madam Speaker, is to ensure that moving forward, water becomes a tradable commodity, one, and two, to ensure that we have responsible boards that are manning these water service providers. But as we do that, Madam Speaker, it should not be lost to us that some of these water service providers are too small that they cannot achieve economies of scale. And therefore, Madam Speaker, I like the approach that the previous Minister of Water, before she moves to land, had of consolidating some of these water service providers so that we can achieve economies of scale. Madam Speaker, some counties are also in themselves small that they cannot be able to accommodate the large dams, or they do not even have that natural resources of putting those dams together. Therefore, Madam Speaker, once we construct the reservoirs upstream, then there is a duty to ensure that the reticulation, we do not lose the water that we transport to those counties. But as we do that, Madam Speaker, it must also be here and emphasized that the governance issue has become and must become one of the major challenges that we must address. Madam Speaker, we as the senators have the obligation and the duty of promoting devolution. As we do that, Madam Speaker, our role to oversight the county governments, our role to oversight the water service providers, our role to oversight the waterworks development agencies must be promoted. This, Madam Speaker, will ensure that when we harvest water, Madam Speaker, it is not only stored, but also used in such a manner that it will promote life. Madam Speaker, water in this country, in some counties, is a very scarce commodity. But we also know that in those very same counties where we have scarcity of water, every time we have heavy rainfall, we have a lot of flooding that causes a lot of damages. Therefore, Madam Speaker, to be able to address that, as we talk of our target of planting the 15 billion trees, we must also come up with a concept of creating both localized storage and also storage that will ensure that we have enough water. Madam Speaker, as I support this bill, I would also want to say that it is also the high time, and I remember one of the motions I moved when I came into this House is application of smart technologies in usage of water. We know, Madam Speaker, in most of these Western countries, the taps will will give water, and will let the water run so long as there is someone there. These sensor motions and mostly also leak detection system, Madam Speaker, allows us to save a lot of water. Having said that, Madam Speaker, it should also not be lost to us that water treatment works is an area that we are doing as a country, we are doing very, very poorly. We know that in most Western countries, water is recycled, it's treated and recycled for either household use or garden irrigation. In this country, Madam Speaker, where most of the latrines are pit, we know that there is a lot of contamination of groundwater, and this is an area that we as a country must also look forward to, especially in line with the SDGs that Kenya is a signatory to. Madam Speaker, the water service providers in most counties, and I'd want to highlight that Nyeri County is one of those counties that are performing quite well in water services. This is simply because we do not rely on pumping the water, but we rely on gravity flow. But we can still do better with some areas like in Kieni West, Kieni East, Madam Speaker, where construction of dams were promised in the 60s have not been realized right now because of challenges in the balance sheet of the country. But as I said, Madam Speaker, at the beginning, the government approach today is to have public-private partnership where you'll be able to let private equity flow into the dams construction, into the development of the infrastructure and education works, which can be paid off like it is with the expressway. Madam Speaker, as I sit down, I would want to urge my colleagues to keep their eyes wide open, especially with the water service providers, because we have a gaping gap in terms of governance, in terms of management, and even we do not have technology application in the usage of accounting and also in the billing system. Madam Speaker, in the advent of internet technology, we know that it is possible today to apply smart meters, but these smart meters will not be of any use if there is no water or the traps are running dry. Madam Speaker, as I sit down, I would want to urge my colleagues to support this bill and also to enhance their role in the oversight so that we can improve governance and transparency and accountability in the waterworks and in water service providers to ensure that Kenyans get water across the counties. Madam Speaker, I support.
Senator Aaron Cheriot, Majority Leader.
Madam Speaker, I want to appreciate the opportunity to speak on this very important endeavor by our committee responsible, charged with this very enormous responsibility. First, for the record, Madam Speaker, I wish to register my appreciation that mediation exercises are now taking a faster time period than previously was the case in the previous sessions of the Senate. Previously, Madam Speaker, the first few meetings would actually end up just being 5 or 10 minutes, and we would disagree on very basic matters, including who chairs the meeting and who makes the opening prayer. That is how bad the relationship between the two houses was then. But I want to appreciate that by the spirit of bicameralism has settled in the country, in both houses of parliament, and they equally appreciate now, Madam Speaker, the very important role of the Senate, that we have specific eyes, keen to detail, to ensure that every law that we pass in this country, Madam Speaker, is in compliance with the spirit of devolution. And therefore, this is one such exercise, Madam Speaker, where we ensure that in our interactions, in our engagements with colleagues from the National Assembly, every time we have a mediation exercise with them, Madam Speaker, is that they appreciate where Senate is coming from. In fact, it is not unusual nowadays to hear members of the National Assembly on their own floor in the National Assembly, and I have seen this more than once, including none other than their majority leader in that house, sometimes rise to oppose a particular position taken by colleagues in that particular house and tell them there's no way Senate will agree to this, because they know how we view things, Madam Speaker, and have come to appreciate that any legislation that has senators involved, Madam Speaker, will eventually end up with that particular law not violating any principal organ of devolution. And I want to appreciate and celebrate all the committees of our House that continue to do this great responsibility and undertake their work diligently, Madam Speaker, to ensure that we live up to our core mandate. Therefore, I celebrate these committees. More specifically on this report, Madam Speaker, I have only about 2 or 3 comments that I want to make, specifically on the committee recommendations that have been made on what now will be the mediated version of this bill, Madam Speaker. I want to appreciate first that this is a very important piece of legislation. Madam Speaker, you understand that in the UDA manifesto, we made a promise to make water available to as many citizens of our republic, Madam Speaker, as possible. Having made that promise, Madam Speaker, we came to the realization that it was going to take extremely long for government of Kenya, either national or county, to get to the last mile of water provision to the citizens of this republic. And therefore, there was need for better thinking on just how to better organize the water sector to ensure that you conform it to the needs of our people, Madam Speaker, while matching the demand to the realities of funds that are scarce and not possible to reticulate this water, Madam Speaker, to all our citizens. And therefore, the thinking that went to this bill right from the onset, which I see now being confirmed in this particular mediated version of the bill, Madam Speaker, is to create powers for various contracting agencies, Madam Speaker, through our water service companies in our counties, Madam Speaker, to ensure that they have the power to enter into contractual obligations with people that have the resources, Madam Speaker, to ensure that they put and ensure that this service is available to citizens, of course at a fee, Madam Speaker, because there are many parts of the country where people actually are willing to pay, Madam Speaker, for this water. But unfortunately, if it is unavailable, it doesn't matter even if you have money, Madam Speaker. So long as that water is not available, there's nothing that you can do. And therefore, I appreciate that this mediated committee, this mediated version, Madam Speaker, has gone to the very basic levels, including disagreeing even on a simple term as such as definition of what will be a bulk water service provider and their relationship with the contracting authority, Madam Speaker, where it has defined it into 2. Remember, Madam Speaker, I mentioned earlier in my initial comments that what I appreciate about our mediation exercises is that they help both houses of parliament to appreciate that there are 2 levels of government. Initially, in the bill as it came, Madam Speaker, it had only the definition of the contracting authority with the mindset of a national government. But our committee, Madam Speaker, is the one that went on to specify and introduce the aspect of, at the county level, the county government, the county agency, or the county corporation which intends to have its function undertaken by a private party. Appreciating, Madam Speaker, that even our county governments, Madam Speaker, will have the power, and we need to grant them the authority, Madam Speaker, to enter into these contractual obligations so that they provide water to their citizens, Madam Speaker, without much of a struggle. Of course, Madam Speaker, the second thing that I want to spend a little time on, Madam Speaker, is on this issue of operation of water works. When an investor, Madam Speaker, through the PPP partnerships, when they have conducted public participation and they have consulted with the regulatory board and the relevant county government whose area and jurisdiction of waterworks is located, Madam Speaker, they are being allowed to first of all engage the citizens, because this is a cardinal principle as per our constitution.